Now, Russia has set out its terms for a partial ceasefire with Ukraine. The White House says Russia and Ukraine have agreed to ensure safe passage for commercial shipping and to stop military strikes in the Black Sea. But in a statement in the last few minutes, the Kremlin has said the agreement will only come into force after sanctions are lifted on Russian banks involved in international trade in food and fertilizers, and they are fully reconnected to SWIFT, the network that facilitates secure financial messaging between banks. That means that Russia is effectively saying sanctions must be lifted from its banks, food producers and exporters, as well as insurers, before a ceasefire in the Black Sea comes into effect. Both sides would also end strikes on each other's energy facilities. The US has been in talks with Ukraine and Russia and Saudi Arabia for the last 3 days or so. The White House has also released a statement on the talks between the US and Ukrainian delegations held in Riyadh, saying the United States and Ukraine have agreed to ensure the safe navigation of ships by eliminating the use of force in the Black Sea and stop the use of commercial vessels for military purposes. The two countries have agreed that the United States remains committed to helping achieve the exchange of prisoners of war and return forcibly transferred Ukrainian children. They've also agreed to start developing measures to implement a ban on strikes against energy facilities of Russia and Ukraine, and will continue to work towards achieving a durable and lasting peace. Joining me is our Russia monitoring editor, Vitaly Shevchenko. A lot of detail in all those statements, but overall, Vitaly, we heard from the Ukrainian President Zelensky, saying that they were ready for this sort of partial pause, at least stoppage in the Black Sea, to start immediately. But we then, a few minutes later, got a statement from the Kremlin saying no, only if sanctions are lifted.
So yet again, caveats and conditions. After 3 days of talks in Saudi Arabia, we have 3 separate statements. And while the statements issued by Washington, they unequivocally say that Russia has agreed to ensure safe navigation in the Black Sea. The statement from the Kremlin says, yes, but, and goes on to list a number of sanctions, conditions, which basically boil down to lift sanctions from our banks, insurers, food producers involved in international trade in food and fertilizers, and then this ban on fighting in the Black Sea will go into effect. Now, several scenarios are possible. The big question is, will America lift its sanctions first and Russia will follow with stopping attacks on shipping in the Black Sea? Or will concerns that Russia will use this as a loophole, i.e. by using these banks and insurers for other purposes, will this overpower the desire to implement this ceasefire in the Black Sea? So this is a very complicated situation, and it's a situation that, well, we've been in for a while now. We've been watching these talks between America and Russia, and separately between America and Ukraine. And while the Americans and the Ukrainians are saying, well, look, okay, let's implement a ceasefire, Russia says, we are okay with the idea, but, and then goes on to list various caveats that stop this idea from being implemented immediately.
President Zelensky has said on the deal to halt strikes in the Black Sea that it's too early to say whether it'll work, but these are the right meetings, the right decisions, the right steps. Why have we got these slightly different emphases in the statements that we've had in the last couple of hours? And are we talking about sanctions just from the US or from Europe too on Russia?
Well, looking at these statements, they only mention what America can impose or lift. So presumably these are sanctions imposed by America. Whether or not Europe will follow is another issue. If we were to take a step back from the immediate negotiations, Gita, I think the rhetoric and the actions by Russia in Ukraine, they suggest that its appetites, as far as Ukraine goes, are not really diminished. Just yesterday, the Russian foreign minister said that Russia still pursues the objective of denazifying, quote unquote, Ukraine, which is the original objective of the so-called special military operation. So they're saying that they intend to do that and also capture more Ukrainian territory. And of course, it doesn't really suggest, in very practical terms, a desire to stop the fighting right now. And the caveats that we've been hearing from Moscow, they also suggest that Russia is more willing to look after its interests of whatever nature rather than stop fighting immediately.
And so it's still not clear when this is going to happen?
No.
No. In terms of what it actually means if it happens, can you just explain the importance of the Black Sea and the grain shipments?
Well, the Black Sea is important for Ukraine because before the war, it used the Black Sea to export huge amounts of grain, which also means that after the war started, customers of Ukrainian grain across the globe, they were hit by this as well because shipping became very dangerous in the Black Sea. Russia wants to be able to use the Black Sea to export its own products, including fertilizers. So the Black Sea matters to a lot of countries, and not just Ukraine, not just Russia, but also customers of grain and fertilizer across the world, in Africa in particular. And that's why they spent the whole of yesterday, really, 12 hours talking about this, apparently. And that's why this first step, the ceasefire, if it ever happens, it can be seen as the first step towards a more comprehensive ceasefire, however optimistic this might look, but there's hope.
And Vitaly, just on SWIFT, to try to understand what Russia wants, they're saying they want to be fully reconnected to SWIFT, which is a network that allows financial messaging between banks. But for them to be readmitted to SWIFT, do they not need, European countries as well to agree to all this?
Well, this is a very complicated system, of course. But America, with its economic clout and financial clout, of course, it can set the tone to what's going on. If America says it's okay to work with Russia, then of course other players in the market will probably listen to that and adjust their policy accordingly. So,
and why is it so important to Moscow to get that?
Well, because it can't receive payments, it can't make payments via that crucial economic system, SWIFT, which essentially is used to move money. And if you can't work with payments, you can't export goods.
Vitaly Shevchenko, thank you so much for coming down. Thank you.